For this session this morning, we have Ryan Engley, who's the VP of Customer Experience at Unbounce, and he's going to be talking to us about mapping a customer journey that drives customer growth. So without any further delay, please help me in welcoming Ryan Engley.
Hey, how's it going? You don't have to worry too much about always sitting for me. If you want, you can stand up and mingle or whatever, or filter in. If you really got to hit the road, no big deal. Don't be super awkward. You can just leave. So I won't judge you. All right, let's get to know each other a little bit. I'm Ryan Engley. I am the VP Customer Experience over at Unbounce. This was me at our first ever Unbounce conference a couple years ago. Shameless plug, we have another one coming up in June. Just keep that on the DL. You may have also seen me at the Customer Success Summit before. I've spoken a couple of times and I'm almost always wearing suspenders. I have learned that I have come to be known as Suspenders Guy whenever I travel. I really like interaction, so please, if you have any questions, typically they're like, hey, wait till the end for Q&A. But honestly, if you just want to shout something out, that's fine. We were also joking earlier that I am okay with heckling, so, you know, it's all good. I'm from Vancouver, and I am a huge Vancouver stereotype. Woo, yoga. Yeah. Yeah, yogis are like, watch out for them at the party. But yeah, so from Vancouver, huge stereotype. This is me at a retreat in Costa Rica, and this is me just being like a huge loser. But you know, why not? Life's fun. Life's too short to take things super seriously. Also, I'm the kind of guy that will share his slides. So if you are going through this and like trying to frantically take photos and you're in the back because you thought that you could sneak out and I wouldn't notice you at the back, but I will, you don't have to worry about zooming in. I'll have the link at the end, so you should stay till the end. Oh, yeah, you saw what I did there. Also, my Twitter handle is in the lower left-hand corner. I don't tweet that much, but if you tweeted at me, I promise I would tweet back at you. That would be great. So, Unbounce, let's dig into this a little bit. Unbounce is a landing page platform for digital marketing teams, marketing agencies who want to drive higher conversions, who want to grow their businesses by getting additional conversions from their marketing campaigns. We have over 11,000 paying customers. We've had really fast revenue-based growth. We took a really, really small Series A few years ago, but other than that, it's all been revenue-driven. We have 130 employees between Vancouver, Montreal, and now Berlin, and we're expanding globally beyond that as well this year. Question, what? Did someone say? Oh, crushing it. Now, the thing about a model like this, having 11,000 paying customers, is it makes like a traditional high-touch customer success model kind of challenging. Well, like virtually impossible, let's be real. Because you know, we have many, many customers. Our average revenue per customer is fairly low, so it's hard to support that. So I want to get a bit of a lay of the crowd here. So first up, how many of you are from companies that are like 1 to 10 people? You just put up your hands. Okay, cool, good to know. How about more like 11 to 50? Okay, quite a few. This will be really relevant for a lot of you. And then how about like 50 to 200? Okay, awesome. Then I think we are going to have a really strong rapport. We are a good group. I was also going to say, how many people are from like 500 plus giant enterprise? Okay, cool. So this may not work for you like organizationally, but within like business units within your company, this will probably make a lot of sense. One more thing. Who would say that their customer base is primarily self-serve? Not mobile. This is just like, it's a metaphor. Go with it. But, you know, self-serve, low touch. Not that many. Exclusively self-serve, I'll say. How about exclusively like high-touch, assisted, kind of enterprise style? Okay, more. How about, whoa, that is not the button to press. How about both? Who's got both? Okay, cool. So the both is, for me, the big challenge, because we have a lot of that. We have a pretty broad range within our revenue. So So I'm going to go through and identify some of the problems that led us to map this journey, and then we'll actually get into the journey itself. So number one, sustained growth is hard. Like, we had really, really great success in early years. We doubled year over year over year. But then we kind of hit a point where we're like, hey, how come what used to work isn't working anymore? Funny thing, that. So early on, we did like a really, really good job with content marketing. We had no sales team. And we had this belief that if people found our content and had the problems we solved, they'd just buy it. It's just sort of like this natural assumption. If they're aware of it, if they have problems, they will purchase. Worked for a really long time. It drove strong growth for years. We never really talked about our product. We talked a lot about why someone would need landing pages for marketing campaigns. It's kind of a like, if we build it, they will come sort of approach, I like to say. You'd have been hard pressed to find a screenshot of our app in like any of the content we produced. Our current CMO, well, our CMO, likes to joke about it a lot, and he's like, man, looking back, it's like we were this benevolent society for the education of marketers, just like creating this content for the world. But guess what? To sell a product, people need to know that you have one. It's like a fundamental thing in sales. Funny how that works. So we didn't evolve to match our buyer needs. Very early on, when you're kind of early growth, when you're working with early adopters, generally people do just need to know that you're out there and they can make their own buying decisions. So we didn't evolve to match buyer needs. As we shifted up market, our growth started to slow a bit because there was a more complicated buying process that we just weren't accommodated to facilitate. Next up, pricing. Look at those prices, 49 bucks? That's cheap, that's easy, that's very self-serve. It was really, really easy for people who were interested, very low friction for them to sign up, trial it, and convert. Incidentally, when it's that easy to sign up, it's also that easy to leave. So, that was a bit of a problem. We had some high churn. We still have, churn is something that we're trying to improve. And typically, when you're looking at churn, hey, that's what customer success does, right? But how does customer success improve churn when you have 11,000 paying customers and your average revenue is, somewhere within this? It's a challenge. And I mean, what you don't see on here is we have some plans where people are paying us like $1,500 per month. So we have people paying us like 25, people paying 15, and then there's this gap in between. So our pricing made it hard to expand value-based revenue as well. So it's difficult with customer success, for the churn point that I mentioned. But then also, when you think about customer success and you think about improving churn and you think about driving additional business value, you want to make sure that you're working with your customers as the trusted advisor and really educating them and helping them get greater business value from your products. Obviously, that's the main tenet of customer success. And if you do that, then they will expand and spend lots of money, and you will be very happy as a business. Lastly, just when it comes to roles and responsibilities, customer success includes support at Unbounce. Our support team was doing great, but to reduce churn, to drive expansion, our model just didn't work that well. It was misaligned with our goals. So we had to answer a few big questions like, who should we be working with? How do we work with them? How do we work at scale, one-to-many, but then also one-to-one? Where does the division of responsibility sit? So responsibilities were really unclear. Those are kind of the three big problems. The pricing issues, the responsibilities, and then kind of the marketing approach that we used in the past just was outdated. So we had to update it. All right, let's get into the customer journey. Number one, most important thing, you gotta understand your market. You need to know who you're marketing to. So this is a quick crash course in product marketing. So this is the market across the board. This is just pretty much anyone that for any reason could potentially use our service. Now, if we dug in deeply, or a little more deeply, then you can kind of segment that into two things. There are people who are actually marketers, and there are people who are not marketers. And this is for Unbounce specifically, or let's say a hypothetical digital marketing landing page company, which happens to be Unbounce. So we got marketers and we got non-marketers. Cool. But even then, marketers is not deep enough for us to know who we should be working with. So you got to dig in a little bit more deeply. For example, digital marketing agencies would be a market segment. Digital marketing teams would be a market segment. Branding agencies would be a market segment. But if you are a landing page platform for businesses who want to grow conversions online using digital tools, a branding agency may wind up using it for some reason, but we're certainly not going to build our product for them. So we were able to identify our two market segments as having been digital marketing agencies and digital marketing teams. And so if your company hasn't done this, it's something you really, really got to get clear on before you take any steps beyond this. Know who your customers are. And to us, it's so important that this is, like, it's a part of our mission. So at Unbounce, our mission is to educate, connect, and empower marketing teams and agencies to grow their businesses with the best conversion tools on earth. So now every single person at our company knows exactly who we're working with. So now that we're clear on who we're marketing to, we're going to get into the actual mapping the customer journey stuff. And as I said before, if you got questions, just shout them out. Like, you can put up your hand if you want, and I'll call on you if you feel awkward yelling, but I don't care. I used to teach elementary school. I'm used to a lot of kids yelling at me. It's no big deal. All right, so let's dig into one of these segments. Let's say, hypothetically, digital marketing agencies. So a lot of the exercise here is like getting narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower in building this journey. So marketing agencies, bam, that's what it looks like up close. But a market segment can be subdivided into a number of components. And this is really how you need to think about anybody that exists within a market segment. This isn't necessarily to scale, but there will always be people who are potentials. They're not shopping. They are people who have the problems you exist to solve. They may or may not be aware of those problems. They aren't looking for a solution, and they may not even want to look for a solution. But they are your potential market. And ideally, that's going to be like a real big piece of that pie. Like, you want to make sure that there's huge potential in your market. Then there are evaluators. Evaluators are shopping. So these are people who have the problems you exist to solve. They may or may not be aware of your solution, but they are looking for a way to solve the problems that they have. So they could be looking to build a solution in-house. They might be evaluating one of your competitors. They might be evaluating an agency. So it's just anyone in like a decision-making evaluation phase. And you want as many of those potentials to move into the evaluation phase of your product. Like, that's what you're trying to drive here. And then at the end, you have your customers, and then you have your competitors' customers. So with customer success, obviously, which one here is the, there we go. We're trying to make that wedge of the pie a lot bigger and drive more revenue from that wedge of the pie. So that's how you need to think about any of your market segments. If we unroll that into more of like a customer journey, like phases in a journey, you'll see, yeah, we got potentials, we got evaluators, and we got customers. If we rename those from like the actual people to more of like a concept, you have a phase where you're really just driving awareness of your product or service, a phase where you're going to be driving evaluation of your product or service, and then a phase where you're trying to drive growth from your customer base. So those are quite high level. But even then, if I look back to the way we had done our marketing, like I said, we focused so heavily up here on awareness and making sure people knew about our brand. We didn't do a really great job here, but we tried to do a really good job here, but our pricing was so misaligned with what we were trying to do that it just didn't make sense. So we can dig in a little bit more deeply. So if those are like the high-level phases, these are stages that exist within. So they're kind of the milestones along the way. When you're driving awareness, first up, someone needs to discover your brand or your content. After that, like, hopefully they show some sort of interest in it. You can measure that by, like, let's say you build an ebook or a webinar or a case study and someone comes across it, that's discovery. Interest is them saying, I care enough about it that I will give you some of my information in exchange for that. So it's kind of lead generation. Now, the problem there is that not everyone who gives you their email address should be considered a lead. Because if you go back to that market segment that I showed you earlier, a lot of people are going to fall outside of your target market segments. So you need to make sure that if you have a group focusing on awareness, they're not just being evaluated on how many people come to your website, like how much interest they're able to generate. You got to make sure that you're measuring on market fit as well. This keeps teams accountable. So when you're talking about customer growth, this means that the people working at the top of the funnel are very conscious of the things happening further down the funnel. So they're setting you up for success later on. One of the main questions I get with this is, okay, that's cool. How do you measure performance along the way? You may want to take out your cell phones if you want to take a picture of this. But like I said, I will share the slides at the end. But this is how we've done it at Unbounce. So the major milestones along our customer journey through awareness is leads. So lead generation, obviously. Then through the evaluation phase, we're looking to get someone to purchase our tool. After they've purchased it, we want revenue growth. We want them to stick with us, and we want them to expand their use of our platform. Then if we dig into like each of the individual KPIs at the bottom, discovery is like new unique sessions to our properties, interest is leads, where they're evaluated for fit, do they fit within those market segments? Within lead, are they sales qualified? So someone might be interested in your content, but if they're not engaging over and over and over, they're not ready to buy. Like they're still just within that potential segment of that pie. You want to continue to engage them and continue to drive urgency around their problems so that they will consider evaluating. And then for us, what we've defined as a customer is someone that's paid us twice. Because it's like really low friction to adopt Unbounce, we see a lot of people who accidentally pay us and are like, no, I didn't mean to have my credit card charged. And we're like, that's okay, we'll give you your money back. Like, don't worry about it. There are better measures, absolutely. This is just what has worked for us right now. So this is like the current world at Unbounce today. And then within growth, looking at retention, obviously we look at account churn, expansion, we look at revenue expansion from those accounts. And one thing you may or may not be thinking in looking at this is there's one that's missing on the growth end, which should be referral, to which I would say, you're right. We'll add it later. All right, so this is kind of a picture of the way the world was back in the day. We were, driving really, really great awareness of our product and our brand. People encountered it, like functional buyers. We're going to get into buyer types here, so bear with me. But a functional buyer is also your user. And when you are a self-serve platform, very often the person making the buying decision is also the person who will be using your product. So it still kind of worked for us, because they would come along, they'd become aware of it. Even though we didn't facilitate a lot of evaluation, they kind of knew that they needed it anyway, and so they would buy. It worked. And that works very, very early stage. But as you grow, it stops working. So developing this model helped us see the gap that we had and obviously helped us close the gap. And what we saw at that point was, okay, this works really, really well for self-serve customers. People where the functional buyer, this is the user, is the one who becomes aware of the content. They know their problems. They have the authority to make the purchase decision. They will be using the product. Really easy. But at the beginning, I asked, who's self-serve, who's assisted, who's both? Well, we're both. So we have to accommodate two different kinds of customers, two different customer segments. So we have this assisted level. It kind of looks the same at this point, except the little purple functional buyer comes along with a few friends. There's the economic buyer. So the functional buyer is like, will this change my life? Will this make my job easier? Should I be using it every single day? Cool. They want to know, what do you do and will you make their lives easier? The economic buyer needs to know, should I spend my budget on this? Will this change our business? Will we get the ROI we need? If we have to change the processes within our department, am I going to see the return on that and how do I go about doing it? And then the technical buyer just wants to know that you're not going to break shit. This is the person who needs to know that you integrate with their tools, that you have the high security requirements or whatever the case may be. So now you can see going through this journey, so these are different states of mind that people go through the entire customer journey. Then there's kind of different tiers. There's self-serve, where it's a lot simpler for them to go through this process on their own. You don't have to segment your communications really because you're talking to the same person the whole time. Then at the assisted level, the way you're going to talk to a functional buyer is very different than the way you're going to talk to an economic buyer, which is very different than the way you're going to talk to a technical buyer. So your team needs to have this mapped out so they know that they're meeting everybody's needs, whether they're self-serve or assisted, what their title is, and at what phase of the customer journey. Then once you get into that, it's the fun part of assigning responsibility. For really small companies, the less than 10 people, responsibility is really not that big of a deal because you're 5 people in a room and you all sort of just know who does what. But as you grow from 10 to 50 or to 100 or to 150 and then obviously beyond that, roles and responsibilities become a really big deal. People need to know, who do I go to for what, who's responsible for this, and the answer, everyone's responsible for it, is not an answer because that means no one is responsible for it. So you got to get really, really explicit, and I'll show you why. So here we have the map. I'll give you an example. So if we were to look at the growth phase specifically, this is how we've done it at Unbounce. So we have our self-serve level of customer. We have our assisted customers. The two market segments that I mentioned earlier, teams and agencies, now let's look at those because we need to support those two market segments. Then we need to think about our pricing. If the goal is to drive revenue growth, we need to make sure that our plans align well with the maturity of our customers. And in doing this, we saw, this is probably where we were first oh man, our pricing does not work with this model. We are trying to drive revenue expansion, and it will not work until we fix this. Because our pricing was based primarily on unique visits to landing pages. It was not related to business value at all. We can't drive success for our customers and then help expand their use of our platform. So this highlighted that, and it's something that we're in the process of addressing. But now that we've got that, it's okay, well, which teams are going to be accountable for what? And the way we've set it up is within our customer engagement team, which is really like a customer success team in the way that you know it. We have a segment who are looking after teams. We have a segment who look after agencies. It's very clear now who they should be working with. And then customer education works more like that one-to-many kind of model using tools like Totango's campaigns. Now, if we go back to the journey and then apply kind of that same mapping across the entire thing, this is the way the world used to be. We had marketing kind of over there. Marketing was sort of focused on trial starts. Customer success kind of on growth, a little bit on adoption, but these huge gaps in evaluation and then huge gaps over here in assisted. Could you imagine? And we didn't have a sales team forever, but we were we need a sales team. Could you imagine throwing a sales team into this? It would be a disaster. So we had to get really clear on roles and responsibilities throughout this whole journey so that we could set them up to be successful. So now the world looks a little bit more like this, which the man in me who is obsessive compulsive loves because it's so clear. And then lastly, the other thing you're probably wondering also is KPIs. Those are the KPIs that fit with the journey. So as I said, these slides will be available. You can take these back and look at them in whatever capacity you want. But now we've mapped out every single step along the customer journey. We have groups assigned, goal-based groups, squads, assigned to each stage of the journey, and very, very clear roles and responsibilities across the whole thing, which has vastly improved communication. It's vastly improved efficiency. And from a customer experience standpoint, our customers are getting exactly what they need, no matter their market segment or size of business. What size were we? 120? Yep. People. Yeah. It's just like a game. 120 what? Apples. What about you? Pants.
When you put that together, did you get people from all departments coming together to map out that journey, or was it just a task force?
It was a task force of one man with a really strong opinion. No, I'm joking. So a lot of this was, the broad concepts, yeah, I got really passionate and tried to get really hardcore buy-in from everybody. I met with 1 million people and pitched them this idea, and they were like, whoa, you care about this a lot. I'm like, I do, I think it'll change our business. And then me and our VP of marketing, she and I spent quite a bit of time on this together. But it was largely a small group. I worked to get buy-in across the company and basically the approval to just move forward with it. So there's a bit of a handoff between sales and customer engagement. If you were paying really close attention to the things that I'd written, you would see that this arrow right here represents someone converting to being a customer, which means they've paid us twice. And adoption is actually trialing our product. And a major theme is customer success should be responsible for adoption. And it was a bit of a point, we argued over it. Well, we didn't really argue. We just tried to make sure that the needs were met in the best way possible. So sales at this point is very inside sales based. They look at customers who start trials, and then they see growth potential, strategic brands, fit, and then they'll work with those. And at about kind of the 30-day mark, they begin transitioning with customer success. I think I'm probably being pushed off stage here, so I'm sorry, I gotta go. Or if you care, sorry, but great outcomes. It helped us establish a common customer-focused language across the company, which addressed a lot of issues because we got people all on the same page, all thinking about our customers and buyers. We mapped our internal processes to buyer and customer needs. So instead of creating a process internally and expecting our customers to adapt to it, we changed the way that we ran our business to match what they needed from us. We identified the gaps we were neglecting in the journey and were able to address them. We established clear responsibility and accountability for the customer experience across the whole company and helped create better aligned goal-focused squads who could really just improve their metrics and drive growth across the entire funnel. And then we addressed questions we've had for ages, like who the heck should we be helping, which is an important thing to do. So far as challenges, things like pricing, we are in the process of changing our pricing, but it's still in the works. So this isn't a wait, launch the journey and it's perfect from day one. It has been an iterative process to get it implemented in the company. The goal-focused squads can accidentally duplicate work. That's another thing. When you try to create that autonomy where groups are responsible to a goal, we do find that occasionally they'll work on projects that we're like, hey, that's really similar to what these guys are doing. So we're improving communication to fix that up. And seriously, it's been really difficult for customer education to work with marketing without getting stuck in an abyss of meetings. So sometimes getting work done gets a little bit sacrificed. So now it's up to you to go get them. How do you do that? Identify your target market segments, map the steps in your customer journey, and then identify the gaps where you may not be meeting your customer or buyer needs. Assign responsibility for each stage and make sure it's clear who is responsible for what. And then be the true champion for your customer voice. Obviously with customer success, we think about customers all day, every day, but who is thinking about the potential customers and who's the voice for them? And I would argue that you should be that voice. So you'll build a customer-focused culture that your whole organization will understand their growth. Wait, what? You'll build a customer-focused culture. Your whole organization will understand their role in customer growth. Should have had a line break. Cool. Thanks for listening. You can get the slides at bit.ly/RyanCSS2016.